What time is it? It's nation time.
Welcome, brothers and sisters, to another podcast called AfterWords. Today, we're speaking to Bishop Mwenda of the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, of course. Mwenda, Brother Bishop Mwenda, you just gave us a sermon called Satan's Soldier, and the text was from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 through 10. Thank you so much for an inspiring sermon. Would you expand on the context for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 through 10? In your sermon, I think you went quickly to talking about rent and the current times, but would you give us a reason and some context that lets us sort of see your thinking, like why you chose that particular political social context?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and really, first, Second Thessalonians. Oftentimes, people think that Second Thessalonians is actually a sequel to First Thessalonians, which it is not. It's totally two independent books. And Second Thessalonians kind of deals with a later time period, more or less around the latter third of the first century. And this context is very important because it provides some coherence. And as I mentioned in the sermon, of the social political environment that this epistle is being written. An epistle is simply a letter. So this letter is written at a time where the community of Christians is being challenged to be Christian, not only in words, but also in deeds and in actions. And in this community, of course, they were dealing with a lot of drama, as I mentioned in the sermon. And this drama was both within the church as well as within the community. What was happening around this whole idea of a apocalyptic intervention, like how would God intervene in the earthly affairs of the community at Thessalonica? So the church is thrown into this drama, this tension, if you will, between those who felt like the kingdom of God had already come because certain politicians had already promised to give them tax cuts. So if I can get something personally out of this, then I am not so concerned about the community, where the masses in the community were still suffering under the iron fist of oppression, and they were figuring out how do we make ends meet. And I think every sermon has to be contextualized within the context historically, as well as what is the contemporary implication for this historical piece of literature, if you will, that we are reading. So I was trying to make a connection between what was going on then as well as what is going on now.
Yeah. Who was the great, well, contemporary, we might say, as you say, 46 minus 1 at the time? Who was for them their 46 minus 1? And who were these people contending for? Of course, it was an electoral system. So what's going on? What's the connection there?
Right. So you still have these emperors, or you have these rulers who are using what was traditionally looked at as like even the temple system. The temple system, where individuals are paying taxes to the temple, and the temple was supposed to serve as a redistribution center where resources come in, and then those resources are distributed to those who stand in need, understanding that it was also the poor who were providing the tax base anyway. So it's really not the poor asking for something that was not due to them. They were already paying into this system, and the system was supposed to be able to rechannel the resources back down to the community. And you also have those who say in the skin that we're in, but still didn't have the same value system because they were utilizing the system for their personal gains. And so oppression in any time looks the same, where you have a small group of people who are controlling the resources that has a negative impact on the masses, who were really the ones responsible for generating the resources to begin with. And as I mentioned also, is also the poor are always used as a scapegoat for everything that is wrong in a society, when in fact it's the elites that are causing the problems. And it takes the poor, if you will, or the prophets to speak up and speak out against what is hampering the collective liberation of the community.
Excellent. Thanks for giving us that social political context for the text. And it's a great segue to this main question I want to ask you is, it seems to me every 4 years, like clockwork, the Black elite puts away all their squabbling, all of their issues, and unites to plead to Black people, to finally move Black people, organize Black people to go to the polls, to vote unanimously for for a particular organization. I know you're not telling us how to vote, of course, but that happens every 4 years. Every other discussion is put aside. All conflict is put aside. Our criticism of the system, our long-standing weariness about this party or that party, or how money corrupts the system, all of that goes out the window, and one voice emerges from the Black elite. That's where we are now. Talk about that or do you think I have that right, like that phenomena is real, right?
Yeah, I think you're certainly point on with that. Certainly when it's time to elect, we're gonna gather our forces, and we're gonna come, as a unified body, if you will, for the most part, because not all Black people are gonna vote one way, never have, never will. But we do kind of rally the forces. But I think what we have to do is also still be critical of how our votes are being cast, right? No matter who it is, it's a two-party system, the Republicans and the Democrats. I am one, I don't like to say the less of the two evils, but what one would argue is that what are we asking of these political candidates in exchange for our vote? And we have to have the receipts. So it's incumbent upon us to make the demands for the things that we want to see in the Black community, and then hold the politicians accountable for that. And when I say that, I'm talking about not only on a national level, but also, as Jaramogi Bebe taught us, that politics is local. That is not just what happens on the like in statewide, well, in the presidential election, but also what happens to state council and school boards, and these entities are municipalities that really have a direct impact on our lives. But you're right, we still have to, even as we come together, we still must be critical and ask the necessary questions about anyone who seeks to garner our support. I say I'm a Democrat with options, and we want to know what are we getting, and that's up to the Black community to hold the politicians accountable for our votes, and understanding the policies that are being set. We have to be able to look at what is the impact on the end user. So, and are these policies in alignment with the divine will that permeates the universe? Is it balanced? Is it just? Does it do harm? And if it does, on a simple basis, we cannot be for it. We want to make sure that the policies are in alignment with the very nature in which the universe exists, where there's balance and there's love, there's harmony, there's reciprocity. Does it line up? And which candidate has policies and not just some concepts that we can say, okay, well, that seems to work best for our people. So we're unapologetic about the fact that we want a candidate that's going to be about the issues that concern Black and brown people. We're very clear on that. And so we want to make sure, however we cast our vote, that is for someone who certainly holds our needs and concerns, not only for our people, certainly, but for humanity as a whole.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned humanity and public policy. In the area of public policy, yes, the great orange one and the 46 minus one, yes, his policies are poisonous, perhaps. But when we look internationally, we have Genocide Joe and issues that are international that we don't seem to focus on. Black leadership doesn't seem to focus on as a place of this is in our interest. here we speak for God. Can you speak for God around these issues? Like
Yes,
God has something to say.
yes, it's certainly, and that's what we talked about toward the end of the sermon, where we still have the responsibility to speak to, quote unquote, to the powers that be, if you will, and I use that word
Yes.
very loosely. But we still have a right to bring the prophetic voice to bear on the things that are going on internationally, globally, and say that wrong is wrong no matter who's doing it, and right is right no matter who's doing it. And so we certainly have a right to speak out on those things where we see on a global level, on a global scale, how this country certainly has been a poor actor in many cases on the international stage. And both things can be true, that we can love this country because we have as much right to it as any other, but at the same time be very critical about some of his policies, and not be afraid to speak on that. Because if you love somebody, you're going to speak truth no matter what. And that truth is what's going to help to correct the very system that we depend upon for, for our survival, even as we build counter institutions in this place, what I call the yet to be United States of America. But certainly we have to be able to look globally, because African people, we're everywhere. And we want to make sure that not only our people survive, but that humanity has an opportunity to thrive as well. So we have to speak truth to power no matter what. That's our responsibility. That's our the prophetic tradition of the African American church. And yeah, so I would leave it there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming to expand on your sermon today. I really enjoyed it. Be well.
Likewise. Thank you.
What time is it? It's nation time.